I'm glad you decided to make it on tonight because one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is some of your research that you've done, especially on the maps. I know that Morgal's really interested in that also. So I'll let you say hi to everybody and just kind of, tell them who you are and what your channel is and all that good stuff. So take it away, Glenn.
Absolutely, thanks. It's great to be here, guys. I'm Flatwater. I think a lot of the people on the chat already know who I am or have seen some of my stuff. So as of late, I came into the YouTube scene and the flat Earth scene wanting to show a couple patents and a couple things that I found recently. So I did that, and things have just carried on to where they are now. One of the first things that I found was some old documents that talk about what is actually at the North Pole, and so that's what has carried on my work as of late. So yeah, basically what I found is that there's more going on at the North Pole than what we're led to believe. So in my model and in my view of the flat Earth, I see that the North Pole is the center of our flat Earth, and so I see it as the center of all creation, the center of all being. So there's a lot that goes with that. You guys have recently been talking about the Fibonacci and some of the other aspects of that. So it's great to talk to you guys and talk to people who know somewhat about the area that I'm looking at. So
definitely, man. Hey, do you have the ability to turn your mic up a little bit, Glenn?
So there we have it.
Hey, yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
This is John, by the way. Can you turn your mic up just a hair, or do you have any, can you beef it up a bit, or no?
Yeah, I think so. Hang on.
Okay. And, yeah, I think there's probably, I agree with you, man. I think there's probably more going on in the northern or the center, and also the southern or the outer, hemisphere, semi-plane, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And, yeah, so I'm interested to hear, what kind of stuff you found, and I'm always interested in maps and stuff too, so definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. What really brought this out to me was that Mercator himself, the creator of the Mercator projection that we all use so constantly, is the one that I derived this information from. So Mercator himself sent a letter to John D, and that's where I originally got that information. Hang on a second.
Yeah, Bob and I have looked at a couple, and I guess Jaron probably has too. I think you were off that day. But no, Bob and I looked at a couple of different Mercator projections. Obviously, the one we're all familiar with, but then also sort of, I guess it was sort of like what, an AE map, Bob, like an azimuthal equidistant with the North Pole in the center. But all the land masses look wildly different than what we're familiar with, and that makes some sense.
Yeah, I actually pulled that particular graphic, I believe, off of one of Glenn's videos, because he was reading the Mercator letter to John D, and of course he was showing that particular map, the Mercator map of 1563, I believe, and yeah, I was absolutely fascinated by that because I had read several other stories from. Specifically from sailors in the 16th and 17th century, or 17th and 18th century, excuse me, that had made the journey up towards the North Pole, and the stories seem to be very consistent with what Mercator was describing. That you get, once you get past a certain degree of northern latitude, you would start seeing, ocean waters and rivers reverse direction. It would start becoming very tropical, and then they would come to a point where, the currents became so strong in, as you approach this northern polar region, that pretty much if you got caught in them, you were going to go down into whatever was down in there. But yeah, I just thought that was absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely.
That looks so fake. I'm sorry, guys. Are you watching this on ISS? I'm not sure what that R2D2 thing is, but that looks really bad. Look at, oh my god.
It's ridiculous.
It's like it's just so fake. It looks like a rendering to me. I'm sorry.
It so is. It's just terrible CGI, eh?
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, U.S. cargo crafts arrives at space station, and this is, yeah, it is really pathetic. And finally, when they ultimately do the docking maneuver, somehow they just mysteriously lose the live feed, and they have to go to a cartoon animation.
Yeah, as
Pretty
always.
typical.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I don't like about using the Mercator projection, the standard one, is just simply by its definition. It's a cylindrical conformal map, which means that the further away you get from the equator, the more and more skewed the relative sizes of land masses or distances between them. Everything just starts getting skewed up to the point where you reach the poles, and it's allegedly, a single point, which would be the poles stretch out to infinity across the top and bottom of the map. And to me, it just seems like the further away you get from the equator, the more and more wrong the maps are. So I don't like to start, we really don't have a choice, but I don't even like to start with the Mercator projection unless there's something I'm missing, like I don't know, taking the original survey data that he used and mapping it out on a plane instead of a globe, because isn't that sort of what he did? Or I don't know, I guess it's a cylindrical map. It's like wrapping it around a cylinder, like a scroll, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, it's really strange and interesting to see what they've done with Mercator. You can tell that, he was obviously the foremost expert on map making at the time, or one of them. And you can see that they've taken what his actual beliefs were about the Earth and converted them into fitting and skewing it into fitting their model.
Huh. So you think that the land masses are accurately represented on the Mercator projection, and we've just sort of been misled about, the whole narrative of it's tough to get a map of a globe right,
Yeah, and I think they've had to convert. They've had to some of the stuff that he did. It was good as he could get it for the time, but obviously we've become much more exact with our measurements, and if they can take aerial photographs and combine them together, we can get a better map of what the Earth looks like. But obviously, I think Mercator, being who he was and the circles that he ran in, I think this is before they pulled the wool over our eyes, so to speak, about the flat Earth. So they've just had to hide certain documents of Mercator's and certain facts about his life, his views about the Earth, and it all fits in nicely with their global model. Did you catch my drift?
Yeah, well, I've sort of suspected here for a while that Mercator was probably a flat earther, just from, a couple things, mainly because, you can only circumnavigate east to west, and he sort of built the map like that. If you go up to the top and go north, you're not going to pop out at the bottom. So, it's like, how obvious, how obvious is it? And then, of course, he came out with that flat earth map, and that doesn't hurt the theory either.
Yeah, exactly. One thing also I wanted to ask you about, Glenn, was I was listening to what we have on the screen here, this Linda Moulton Howe on the Alaska Pyramid Underground Base, and I found this really interesting because she is interviewing the son of a guy that was basically ex-military, had fought in a couple wars, and this was an activity that was going up in Alaska. And it's an interesting story because the guy is talking about how his dad told him that he went on this mission with these guys to deliver some cargo to a what appeared to be an underground pyramid, and this particular pyramid is fairly close to Mount McKinley, or Mount whatever they changed the name to. Denali, that's it. It's fairly close to there, but it's underground, and he's talking about that the power output of this underground pyramid is so high that it could literally power the entire country of Canada and then some. And they actually get very specific about where it was. It says in the text down here, it says an apparent buried pyramid about 50 miles from Mount McKinley is where it is, and I believe it's 50 miles west of McKinley. And I thought that was interesting because there was another flat earther that did some work that was showing that there was something very close to Mount McKinley, that all of these megalithic sites make a perfect 360-degree circle around. And I actually talked about this in a show a while back. So I'm wondering if this, particular pyramid thing is not maybe the North Pole, or the actual source of this magnetic energy coming from there. Now I don't really recall exactly how far away from the geographic North Pole McKinley is, but within 50 miles of it. I just thought that was super interesting, and I wonder if you had any comment on that.
Well, I totally think I think there's tons of evidence to show that the pyramids were probably used to generate some form of energy, and that's all over the world. And so for them to find one in Alaska doesn't surprise me, because they're finding them in China, they're in they're all over the world. I mean, South America. In fact, I've even heard rumors, I've never seen evidence, but I've heard rumors of them finding some type of either pyramidal structure or Egyptian type culture in the Grand Canyon. So the whole myth of the ancient cultures being separated by space and not knowing of each other, to me is sort of, it doesn't match the evidence, because just look at the pyramids. We still don't know how they did them today, and yet they all knew how to do them. And apparently, it's like they were using them to just tap the energy from the earth and harness that. I think we could probably learn a lot from that. And another thing too, I like Linda Moulton Howe. I think she believes in her research, although of course she's pretty famous for all the alien stuff, but I still, I've always for some reason, sort of trusted her research, because she does seem to do her research. I just happen to disagree with the whole theory of the aliens coming from other planets or whatever.
Yeah, same here. I think that we're on this plane and behind the dome, and that I don't think that there's an infinite plane, and that there's other puddles out there. It's a really interesting tie-in, the pyramid that you were talking about there, Bob, and Linda Moulton Howe. It's just another interesting thing that lines up with all this. I don't know if you've seen all the videos that I've done about the pole and what's going on there, but there's more than just, like you were saying, Bob, there's lots of accounts of explorers going up there and finding these basically at the 78th parallel, a gigantic mountain range that rings and lines the North Pole, and that inside of that is the in-sucking rivers and the Mount Mary that we're all somewhat familiar with. So it's amazing how much history ties into all this. I've also used.
Whoops!
I think we lost you for a second there.
A really famous book that a lot of historians quote from, and this particular portion of it has been covered up to us, but if you read the whole thing, and in the Inventio Fortunitae as well, you can see that lots of other explorers talked about there being some sort of a meeting of all energy sources at the North Pole, like a meeting point in the midst of a cross, I guess you could say. That the North Pole would be the center of up, down, and left and right, or the center of all measurements on Earth, and that at that point that there is some sort of they call it a marine sponge. This is their terminology at the time, but what they're describing is that it's a place where all matter comes together, and that there's a lack of gravity or a lack of other forces that we would normally see there. So it's just crazy. To me, this is the top of the line place for us to look for more clues about how our Earth is functioning. And they're definitely, when you tie in the dew line and the Arctic agreements that the Russians and the Americans have been coming to over the last 50 years, and the Cold War, and a lot of other historical factors, and the Antarctic Treaty as well. When you tie that all together, you see that they're definitely keeping us from the poles and keeping us in this center ring of the three rings of.
Yeah, I agree, man. I'm just so fascinated with the Crimea, the ones in Crimea too. Sorry, Bob, go ahead.
Oh, nothing. Glenn, I don't know if you're uploading another video like you were the other night.
I think it's just being in Canada that my connection is bad with you guys.
Oh, okay, yeah, because I mean, we've got you about 95%, but you have dropped out just a couple times. So if we talk over you, it's because you kind of disappeared. But I agree. Let me go back and comment on Linda Moulton Howe. Yeah, Linda Moulton Howe, John. Um, I can personally testify that, first of all, she is not Patricia Steer.
Oh my God, are you serious? Is that what people think?
People think that she's Patricia Steer, yeah. And so I met Linda Moulton Howe. In fact, I sat right next to her in the front row at the Secrets conference back in, I believe it was 2004 or something like that. Anyway, it was in Tempe, Arizona, and of course this is one of those things that Richard Hoagland was giving a presentation at, as well as David Wilcock, which I was a big fan of at the time also. But I sat right next to her for 3 days, and we talked a lot, and we even went to lunch together at one point, and she's a very fascinating lady, and even though she seems to be highlighted about a lot by Richard Hoagland, I don't think she's really directly affiliated with him that much, and I'm pretty sure she's still on the up and up with the stuff that she presents. But so getting past that, also I wanted to comment about some of the pyramid research that I've done, and of course, first of all, I guess the best way to start would be understanding what the word pyramid means. Pyr means fire, and amid means in the middle. So pyramid means fire in the middle, and to me that is definitely a direct reference to a power source. A lot of these megalithic sites and monuments that we have all around the world, exactly. I think definitely had some capacity. Yeah, and one thing that go ahead.
All modern culture, this is another thing I'm looking at, is that all the symbolism that we see from the Illuminati, when you trace it back one way or another, that is what it points to. It points to the pyramid, it points to a central power source and a central force. So, you have I could just go on with this for hours, but we have Star Trek, Star Wars, the Force, it's just basically all of pop culture. When we look back at it and reanalyze it, we can see that they're hinting towards the true nature of our planet, of our plane.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And, some of the research that's been done on pyramids is fascinating. That was one thing that David Wilcock definitely did a good job in exposing, is some of the pyramid research done by some very excellent researchers, both Russian and American, and, international scientist community that have done pyramid research. And what they found is they found that medicines, if they were put inside of a pyramid, would actually be considerably more effective. Foods that they would put inside of the pyramid and let sit there for a few hours, up to 24 hours a day, something like that, the nutrition values would shoot up in them. If there were ill mice, for example, that had certain ailments or even cancer, they would house them inside of a pyramid, and they would make really miraculous recoveries. And so I started doing some little pyramid research myself, and of course what I did wasn't really any big deal, but it was one thing that I had heard that I thought was pretty fascinating. And so what I did is I got a hold of some small pyramids that were made out of crystal, and I took a shot glass and I filled it full of water, and I put it inside of the freezer, in my freezer downstairs, and then I placed the pyramid below it and left it in there for several hours, to the point where it should have absolutely been frozen. In fact, I think I left it in overnight on one of them, and opened up the door the next day, and there is the shot glass above the pyramid, and the water had not frozen yet. It was still absolutely liquid. Everything else in the freezer was frozen, and yet you take that pyramid away and just thump the side of the shot glass, and it would freeze instantly. So very, very strange phenomenon that are brought about by pyramids, and I think a lot of people should do a lot more research on them, because they are absolutely fascinating. And you're right, Glenn, they are absolutely an underpinning of the energy grid of this planet, and that's why I think that it's no big mystery that all of the megalithic sites with all the pyramids on them sit directly on nodal points of the Earth grid, the ley lines. So
absolutely, it's fascinating, isn't it? It's really neat what you're bringing up there about the healing power and some of the other attributes of the pyramid. What we've seen that they can do. A part about seeds, that they can bring back dead seeds and make them more fertile, all kinds of stuff. It's fascinating. It's amazing.
Well, you know, the other thing too is I think that pyramids were probably really a good thing, and you know, just an awesome display of what either people or whoever built them, I don't know, some people think that, and I think it's possible that people just sort of stumbled on the remnants of them, but who knows. But you know, whatever it is, I think that because the Illuminati, if that's what you want to call them, has sort of owned that symbolism, people start to associate the pyramids with this group of crazy people, and I think that's sort of happens a lot too. And so to me, it's important to not necessarily associate pyramids and the awesome power that they represent and the mystery that they represent, and sort of stay away from inspecting that because that's got Illuminati written all over it. I think they sort of own that symbolism because they understand that there's a lot of power in it. And like, if you actually look at the way the pyramids were set up, it seems like they were using the ebb and flow of the Nile to basically create a piezoelectric effect, if I'm saying that right.
Yeah.
And they were mixing different sorts of chemicals in the different shafts or chambers, and it's almost like it was a huge battery, or maybe something more exotic than that. But it's very, very fascinating, and I'm pretty sure that the ancients knew we didn't live on a spinning globe too, because don't a lot of the constellations still line up with those shafts all around Egypt and even different ancient sites? So if we're hauling ass through space, right, in the heliocentric model, how could that stuff still even be close to lining up? It never, if it moves, it just regresses slightly. It never goes anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Great points. Yeah, it's crazy. The way parallax would work, stellar parallax. It's one of the most obvious clues that we're not on a flying ball flying through space. The stars would change every minute of every day.
Yeah, they would. And what was it, the guy that Mark Sargent had on, that was the Navy master instructor, I guess he had a web page, and he actually had an experiment set up, and I never did find this, so if anybody in the chat knows where it was or anything like that, let us know. But he supposedly set up an experiment that was to measure this parallax, and was never able to measure it. And he talked about setting up two parallel, I think, sight lines, and watched it for something like an entire month, and at the same time every day, and it never ever changed 1 micron, which is pretty fascinating. But I'd love to see that actual experiment, but I do remember him talking about that, because again, this is just another thing that proves that we're not on a spinning ball, and these arguments that the ball earthers come up with are just fantasy. But I'm with you, Glenn. I'm more interested in what's going on at the North Pole, because granted, whatever's at the South Pole, whether it's a barrier or the ice wall, and I'm sure that's probably true, to some extent, but whatever is going on at the North Pole and the immediate region around it seems to be, highly secretive, by, the dew lines and all the secret projects that are going on up in Alaska and stuff like that. And also, why are all these megalithic sites, all the pyramids, all on the ley line grid? That's all fascinating to me, and I think that there's a lot to be learned about that. They can tell us a lot about our world.
Yeah, for sure. There's something up there that they're hiding. I don't know if you guys got the part about Pliny and Strabo and it being in the natural history, but that's, as you were talking about those, the ancient sailors, they all report the same thing, that they get up there. And it's interesting, a lot of people are trying to tie this into the hollow earth thing. I don't subscribe. I don't think that there's a hole there where we go into another world. Obviously, we've seen that the flat earth is pretty crazy, so saying that the North Pole is the center of creation is pretty crazy. Saying that the sun might be a reflection is pretty crazy. So, or sounds crazy at first sight. So, I wouldn't say for sure that there's not some sort of a hole at the pole and that there's not more going on there. There's not something underneath it, but in my opinion, I don't think that it is proof to the hollow earth. So just to get that out of the way for some people that are looking in that direction, I don't see it going that way. But definitely there is something at the North Pole that they're covering up, that there's something wonderful there that they don't want us to see, among possibly many other things.
Yeah, I agree. But now, as far as the, as far as the hollow earth theory, I mean, to me that could still be viable, at some point. But what I find interesting is the Vedic cosmology and how it describes Asgard, Midgard, and then the lower level below that. But it appears that this tree of life, if you will, seems to have like vertical levels, for lack of a better word, and I was wondering, I'm trying to tie all this together, especially with some of the stuff that Admiral Byrd, allegedly witnessed at the North Pole, and also what the Himalayans believe about the existence of Shambhala. So the question is this an actual physical place that we can travel to, or is this more something that would be above the magnetic plane, the magnetic center vortex? That's kind of what I'm wondering, because when you look at the description, Plato's description of Atlantis, it also seems to be a place that's made of concentric rings, and the more I think about it, the more I wonder if it's not actually our planet, our plane that Plato's describing metaphorically. So, whoops.
I'm not going to jump on board with the hollow Earth theory yet, but I know that the idea of if you were to fly up to the pole and then go straight down into the ground and wind up somewhere else, that does align up with the Vedic cosmology as well. And I'm not on board with that either, but I know a lot of people are. So I've never personally been to the North Pole, and I've never even talked to anyone that's been further north than like 70 degrees north or something like that. 50 degrees north, I don't know. Wherever Alaska is, like the furthest north you can get in Alaska, that's the furthest north I've ever talked to anyone. And allegedly, even in I guess it was the early 1900s, what was his name? Parry supposedly went to the North Pole, but even that's debated. And who's to say what's there? I sort of keep my mind open, but I don't jump on board things unless I see direct evidence for it. So I guess that's kind of ironic, isn't it? I'm a flat Earth proponent and a skeptic.
Well, yeah, we have to be, right? We want to find evidence that shows that there's actually some reason to believe the things that we're believing, right? So that's what we do now as zetetic scientists or zetetic astronomers. Is we find we use reasonable evidence to come to reasonable conclusions.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with that. But also, Glenn, I think that there is a lot in ancient history or mythology that can give us big hints, without a doubt.
I'm in agreement with the model that you just laid out there, that there is some sort of a tree that, whether, like you were saying, whether or not we can physically travel to those places or not is speculative, but of course it is possible that it is a physical realm that we're not able to visit in this physical body, but in a future incarnation, or after we pass away and we become another light being as we were before we were.
I think we lost you.
Okay, sorry, I'm cutting in and out.
Yeah, you're good now.
Yeah, you're back.
Sorry about that. I can lose you.
All right, so all right, yeah. So I totally agree with you. I think there's a lot to be, derived from ancient mythology and stuff like that, and it all is kind of this big, piece to the puzzle that we've heard. Now, I haven't really read a lot of Admiral Byrd's diaries, I guess, on the North Pole. Have you looked into that much, Glenn?
No, I haven't looked at what Byrd has said specifically. Like, I think, like a lot of us, were aware of what's the mainstream story about Byrd and his journals and that stuff. I've seen that stuff, but I haven't been able to get a hold of any of his actual information as of late. What I recently did was put together a piece about the mainstream's version of northern polar exploration and southern polar exploration, and just pointing out how every time that they get anywhere near the poles, they cut back 99% of the explorers that are there and tell them to stay at the ship. And then the main two geographical society partners, or people that have been sent there, they're the ones that go and investigate the pole. And when they do so, every time that they do it and they have a journal denoting their journey, those 2 pages or those portions of the trip are always excised from the text, and the public has never shown those texts. So it's just more evidence that there's something going on there that they're covering.
Yeah, well, and I guess they carefully pick who those two people are, right?
Yeah, they're all Royal Geographic Society or National Geographic explorers, and they're all funded by the Royal Geographic Society. So you can see that they're, that organization is obviously linked to the ex ancient cartographers and to the United Nations and to all of those global bodies as a whole.
Yep. Yeah, it's amazing how National Geographic just kind of, became the authority on that, out of the blue. But again, not surprising either, considering who is structuring all of this stuff.
Right. It's like the scientific end of Disney. So they've become some acceptable form of science that everybody, at least for me growing up, my parents loved National Geographic. We always had a subscription for it, so I would always read that and see what their point of view was. And looking back now, you guys have seen that they just push evolution as a global model nonstop, beginning to end of every book.
Yeah, they really
absolutely.
do. Yep.
So, Jaron, you've been kind of quiet. Are you still with us?
I'm here.
Oh, okay. We just wanted to make sure you were still here.
Smithsonian is another example of the same thing. They're all in the same group. It's a complete joke of a museum, all about space, all about evolution. And the only thing I would say about Admiral Byrd, and the reason I kind of got turned off by him, his journeys were paid for by John D. Rockefeller. So, that kind of led me away from that a little bit. And then most of his journals, I believe, were written by his nephew once he was dead, or his nephew said he found him. I just get wary of things like that. It just seems like it'd be an easy way to make money.
That's my point of view about it, is that we can't trust anything that these people are telling us.
Yeah, and I mean, because I run a bookstore and I read old books, I just know, I think all that stuff has been tampered with or is fake. So Aristotle's books, that stuff has had plenty of opportunity to be changed. None of the original writings exist. It's all recopied. It's all changed. So anything that you read in that, you just have to read it with that mindset of they're going to try and push you in a direction. And it's so obvious. I mean, if you read Aristotle, he clearly says things he would have never known. He mentions Antarctica. You're talking about 300 BC. And he says, there must be a southern ice sheet at the south of the globe because there's one at the top. Well, then wouldn't they also assume that there's land on the other side of the globe from where they were? They would have already known America was here. So, I mean, the whole thing, you can just read it and understand where it is him talking, and then sometimes you'll read it and say, that's them trying to make him look dumb, and then that's them trying to make him look smart. And if you read those guys' books, or Lucretius, these guys were either geniuses of their time because they'll be talking about nonsense, and all of a sudden they'll get to something that's about current cosmology, and they'll explain it so eloquently. And, well, of course we know that science has shown us that the Earth couldn't possibly be a flat plane, and then they go on and on about why it's a globe, but it's so clearly written yesterday. I mean, it's like so obviously faked and fraud. So it's just a joke. I mean, at that point, you have to just make sure people read that stuff with a mindset of what you're looking for, and to understand that it's probably not written by those guys, or we even have their writings still. You don't throw away writings unless you're going to rewrite it and say, I'm going to change this version a little bit and write my own version.
Yeah, they've absolutely they've taken history and rewritten it the way that they want it to fit their model. That's what's interesting about the pieces that we found that do show these anomalies at the poles, is that those pieces are ordinarily cut from those pieces from the journal, from the other works like Strabo and Pliny and Pliny's Natural History, like you were talking about there. That it's obviously been gone over, and they've excised those parts they didn't want us to see. But the way that we found this is people have gone to, similar to the Gleason's map, people have gone and found other documents in old libraries and been able to stitch together other pieces of it, and that's where this information comes from, where we've seen this extra bits about the poles. So it's crazy stuff.
Yeah. So what? And you said you believe that in the dome and in the sky?
Oh yeah, I'm 100% on board with your guys' model of the flat Earth. Like, I've been following you guys since January. I think I've been following. So when I started, when I first saw Jeranism stuff, I wanted to say thank you guys so much for having me on. It's crazy that I'm on here talking to you guys. You guys have been my heroes in all of this. So it's really cool to be here.
Oh, thanks, man.
All right. Yeah, thanks. That's awesome. So I don't know if you guys have seen this before. Speaking of megalithic sites, you know, I don't know if you've been to the Grand Canyon. I'm sure most people have, and it's quite a remarkable, you know, wonder of the world, I guess. But Lee Bracker, the same guy that edited our video together for Before It's News, I started looking at some of his videos, and this I thought was super interesting because what he's showing here is basically the summits of, you know, these particular points of the Grand Canyon line up perfectly with Orion, the Orion constellation. And I saw this, and I actually started looking at the elevations of these things, and right on these points are exactly where these summits are. And, you know, the odds of this happening are beyond astronomical, and I just kind of wanted to get you guys' feedback on this, because this just blew me away. I just didn't, speechless.
Yeah, well, you see that same alignment with the Great Pyramids at Giza. Obviously, that's the most popular one. But it's like, if you go and look at all these different ancient sites that have pyramids, and others even that don't have pyramids, so many of them are mapped out to sort of reflect, you know, as above, so below type of thing, and reflect the night sky, and have alignments with certain events in the night sky. And so, yeah, the ancients were definitely star watchers, and I just think it's so amazing. You know, something that I couldn't come to terms with my whole life as a globe earther was how, you know, I understand sort of the distances are supposed to prevent any parallax change or anything, but just all the different angles involved and the constant motion, and the fact that, you know, if you think about it in the globe earth model, the earth never touches the same point in space twice, ever. It's always a new point that they're at, always a different angle depending on, you know, the solar year or whatever you want to call it. And it just didn't make any sense that none of this stuff ever moves at all, not even a yard, right? But yeah, so even the ancients had that certainly looks like Orion to me, and that's the one at the Grand Canyon, you say? I can hardly see it.
Yeah.
Maximize it.
So
it is at
another point. Sorry to cut in. Another point that goes with this is you might see this on my channel as well. I've done some parts about Atlantis, and what I was really pointing out there was Harry Hubbard and one of his partners. They found some places in Illinois and other places where you'll find Hebrew writings and other ancient Punic and Latin writings all over North America. And so what Jeranism was talking about there, about the Smithsonian, they've obviously gone around to all these sites. This is what my research shows. They've gone to these sites and collected all of the information that points towards world traveling culture that had the capability to travel extreme vast distances and maintain themselves in any landscape. So you can find Hebrew and Punic and Egyptian hieroglyphs all over the world, and you can decode what they're actually saying. The mainstream science will tell you that you can't decode that writing, but you can see on my channel that it is easy to decode. It's been decoded. So when you actually read what they're talking about, they write that this is the leftovers of the Ptolemaic dynasty, that they moved on after a major war. And so it's obvious that this is what was happening, to me anyways, that this culture was a plane-wide culture, and that this is what the Smithsonian and others are partially covering.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, hadn't they been covering up a lot of the, I don't know, I've never seen a giant skull, but I've seen compelling talks and presentations about anytime people or archaeologists find these giant skulls, then the museums like the Smithsonian just sort of grab everything up, and then you never see it again, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's bang on. That's exactly what it is. The giant information that's also part of the document. Klaus Dona and others. It all ties together. The Genesis 6 stuff, so the scripture. And it's really neat. It definitely ties together.
Oh, yep, that sure does. So anyway, yeah, I just kind of wanted to flip this out here for you guys, but I was fascinated because I had no idea that, I mean, I knew we had some of these monuments, but you never really hear about a lot of stuff in the United States. Usually it's in, the Middle East or in Africa or something like that, where, where all the good stuff is. But, every time I've ever looked at the Grand Canyon, it has been really hard for me to believe the mainline story that the Colorado River carved that canyon. To me, it's so absurd. I can't even, it's just ridiculous. And so if that is not true, which I don't believe that it is, and of course we're seeing things that, we've got this perfect alignment, not to just, Orion's belt, like the pyramids in Giza are, or, several of the other pyramids, but I mean the entire constellation seems to be represented there. And, if this is true, which I believe it probably is, because honestly the odds of that happening where those alignments occur perfectly at the summits of every one of those peaks, well, to me it's just impossible. That means that the Grand Canyon was actually intelligently created as a gigantic, probably the largest megalith in the entire world. So yeah, it's just stunning to me.
Well, what's stunning to me is they could actually, be more to history than we're told, and that's what is so fascinating to me is like, and of course you've got these people that are in control that don't want us to understand what was going on back then, because I submit that they understood a lot of things that could really benefit us for free, and there's an element to the society that doesn't want that. So
yeah, isn't that the truth? So okay. Well, anyway, I want to kind of flip back to CD, who's in the audience tonight, and I'm sure you guys know him. But he had a test of procession, and CD, I haven't had a chance to watch this yet. I'm sorry, other than what we just did. But he's been kind of describing it to the chat, and I will definitely check it out once we're off air. Looks like about a 3.5-minute little presentation here. But just something else, even with Stellarium, that I guess is going to show the lack of procession. So anyway, yeah, I'll check that out. All right. You guys got anything more on that before I flip to another subject here?
Nope, go for it.
Okay. All right. So let's see. I also wanted to point out one thing that John LeBlanc had done, and I watched this. It was very interesting this week. I guess he did a couple months ago, and I just missed this somehow. But he did some basic mathematics for the curvature of the Earth. It's a 4-part series, and it's really quite good. And I think it clears up a lot of the misconceptions about what the curvature is of the Earth. And what we found, what basically he concluded, is that Eric Dubé was correct in his 8 inches per mile squared up to a certain point, and then after that there are some other factors that need to be taken in.
Well, this is that I've been wanting to point out, is that when they made the globe model, you can imagine that if we had two people, say, I don't know, 50 miles apart, well, there could easily be a hill in between them. So you're able to do the math of the curvature of the Earth when you're talking about a quadrant, because two people can be standing and have a huge hill or a huge curve or bend or arc between them. And that's how they did the math. Then what they did was multiplied it by 4 and said, now it's a sphere. And that's what people need to realize, is you can't live on a ball. You can live on a giant hill where one person's at one bottom of the hill and the other person's at the other bottom of the hill, and that becomes a huge arc. That's why they use the quadrant, because they only can take the math in the 4. So if you're going to use the Earth, for example, you can do the curvature 8 times the distance squared up to only about 6,000, right? Yeah, 6 times 4 is 24. So at about 6,000 miles, you cannot go further than that, because if you think about it, you'd be coming back. Your curvature would go out from you, then it would hit the furthest most point at 6,000 miles, then it has to start coming back to you, which is impossible. The whole thing is conjecture. It's all It's a religion. You have to believe in what they've taught you. You have to believe in gravity, because without gravity, there is no cosmology. There is no, the entire thing goes to kaput. And that's where science dropped the ball, is because they talk about the scientific method, and they talk about if something is proven false by experiment, you have to get rid of it, you have to throw it out, but they don't do that. With gravity, even when it didn't conform to their measurements anymore, they should have just thrown gravity out. Well, of course, if you throw gravity out, then you've just admitted we don't live on a ball. So they had to keep it and throw in dark energy and dark matter, and now they're dancing around nonsense, and the fact that people let them get away with it is insane, because the whole thing is crap. The whole idea of gravity doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't even jive with anything that we see ever. Even if you look back, and let's take from the very first point where you have the Big Bang and matter is thrown about in space. If gravity existed, it would immediately become one big ball, and that would be it. There's your universe. It's one giant ball. If it's not that, then who decided who gets to be the center of gravity at all these points? Who raised their hand and said, I'll be the Earth, and I'll be drawing things to my center, and okay, you be Mars, and you can draw things to your center. Gravity can't have its own ideas of who's going to be where, and it just doesn't make any sense. It would have all coalesced into one central point. You can't say everything goes to the center of what? Everything goes to the center of the Earth? Okay, well, that's kind of what we believe about the flat Earth, that everything tends towards the ground of the Earth. That makes sense. That's something we all can see. If I throw a baseball up, it's going to drop right at my feet. If Bob throws the same thing from Colorado, it's going to drop right at his feet. We can't then decide, well, that means we must be a ball. No, it just means everything tends towards the Earth. So it just is upsetting that they're able to keep dancing around and keep doing all these new things, and theoretical physics and metaphysics, and they're just going to keep going and going because they can't stop. To stop is for them to admit that they're no longer doing science.
Yeah, I heard you talking about this the other day, Jared, and it's amazing what you're saying. Like, we see that gravity just doesn't work the way that they tell us. When do you ever see a heavy object pull a small object towards it? So I could be out on a field and throw a...
Let's give him a second. He'll pop back on.
Yeah, we lost you at throw. We lost you at throw.
Sorry, you throw a ball and you don't see it get pulled by a pole or some heavy object that's nearby. Its path isn't warped by heavy objects. So we see that that's not how gravity is working. Another one that's neat is the Lagrange points, like what you were just mentioning there, between planetary bodies. How would this work that you go up into space, and so you're at a neutral point between the two poles of the bodies? It just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't work. We have up and down and left and right. And that's the way that things
and we
work.
have give and take, and we have cause and reaction, and there's always an opposite to everything that you can do. There is nothing that stands alone as an all-generating force, and that's what gravity does. It doesn't have an opposite. It doesn't have a counter. It just has itself, and we're supposed to believe that it just pops up out of anywhere and does whatever it wants and asserts its own pressures based on nothing other than mathematics, which makes their system work. That's the only reason that gravity is different on the moon than it is on Earth, because otherwise their system doesn't work. But it's just nonsense. It doesn't jive at all with reality. And that's what's so upsetting. I mean, you have people who, if you question gravity, will laugh at you and say, well, then go jump off a building. Like, oh, dipshit, I didn't say I wouldn't fall down to the ground if I jumped off a building. That's absolutely the truth. But that does not mean that we rotate the sun, and that the sun rotates the galaxy, and the galaxy rotates the universe. That's just all crap. And they just had to keep adding these miles upon billions of miles and light years, because they kept having to make their system work over and over again. It's the biggest disgrace to science of all time. I mean, I even find myself doing it, where I often say bad things about science or scientists, and I actually don't have a problem with most of it. You know, obviously science is fantastic, and the science that being used correctly and actually following the scientific model is probably the best thing that ever happened to mankind. But they've taken that and said, okay, well, let's just push some things through and call them science, and people will have to believe that we've gone through the scientific method. When have we done an experiment that shows gravity?
Yeah.
Show me how a ball can rotate and keep water to itself.
That's right.
You'll never see it. It's impossible, and yet, there's nothing big enough to test it. Then it's not science. If it's not big enough to test, then how can we say anything about it is scientific? And you're just saying, you just admitted that gravity is conjecture, that it is a thought process, it's a thought experiment. Even Newton himself said over and over again, tons of quotes, don't ascribe this to me. I'm not saying that this is even possible. Same thing Copernicus said. If you take what I am saying and try and put it into reality, you're going to look like a fool. That's what he said. And they did that, and they look like fools, but they've made a way that they say, well, let's just teach the lie and teach that the truth is the stupidest thing anybody can believe. So go through my comments on my videos and you'll see everybody thinking that I'm the biggest idiot alive because they've been taught that what they think or believe is true. It's just another religion, and absolutely the worst one because it was taught as not being a religion. At least the other religions had the balls to say we're a religion.
Totally, and I constantly get comments too. In fact, I was going to read a couple when we ran out of stuff to talk about, but like this one just so totally sums it up because most of this stuff has been asked and answered, but like the first question, and I'll get 3 or 4 or 5 in a row from the same person, but if the Earth is spinning is not a perfect circle, why is the Moon a perfect circle? If spinning too, but not affect its shape, very confused in both theory, maybe both are wrong. And so, I guess English probably isn't his second language, so not dogging on him there, it's just hard to read, sorry. But, the moon's a circle, so therefore we live on a spinning globe. You jump off a bridge and you fall to the ground, therefore we live on a spinning globe. It's just so stupid. There's no logic to it. And, when you actually take the time to do the experimentation, throw something up in the air real high, and you'll pretty well prove right there that the Earth isn't spinning, 800 miles an hour or whatever, depending on your latitude, right? And but no, people will call you stupid, and they'll rattle off 5 or 6 reasons that have already been asked and answered, and most of the stuff that people point to try to prove the globe, works in either model, but there's pretty clear, obvious evidence that we couldn't possibly be spinning at all. It's all over the place. The stars.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty crazy, and the fact that we constantly get trolled by people is beyond belief. And the thing I don't understand is if these people are not believing in the flat Earth, or they don't want to participate and contribute to it, you have to wonder what is their life about that they come and they dog you and they try and convince you of their side of the story, like we haven't done that research, and they act like they're bringing something new to the table, and it just, the whole psychology behind that just blows me away. These are the people that we wonder, it's like, are these the actual paid government shills, or are they just so unbelievably deeply in denial, or what's going on with it? But yeah, it's
when I took this journey, I didn't talk this through with anyone. I sort of did the experimentation on my own, read through the stuff on my own, thought about this a lot, but I certainly didn't go around calling people names and just having like these pseudo see, here's the proof, when if you actually think it through, the moon being round doesn't prove anything. I've always said what we see in the night sky can't possibly prove anything about the ground. It's just a leap of logic. That's all it is, and people have done a very good job of convincing us, since we apparently see spheres in the night sky, then we must also live on a sphere in the night sky, right? And it's just, it's common sense to say, well, no, not necessarily, right? Or is it just me?
No, absolutely. What you're saying is so true. It's what happened to all of us, and the reason I feel terrible about what happened to us is we had no option. We had no ability to not believe what they taught us in school. There's nobody who can say, all throughout school I never believed that the Earth was a ball. It's impossible. There wasn't the ability to question it. You just had to accept it, and so our entire life and our entire senses had to be built around the globe. And that's what we all saw, and that's what we all felt. And so everything that they teach you, and everything that's in the books, and every logo, and every commercial, you name it, is all reconfirming that for you. And every movie, and every space idea, and NASA, and every space movie, everything is meant to put that back into your mind, aliens and light years and stars or suns, and everything is just destroying your brain. And now, I mean, Bob, I know, has the same issue I do, that often my head hurts because I'm trying to think outside the box, but really to think inside the box, or get away from the sphere of the whole thing, and it's really tough because it's just the way they describe it. I've been thinking lately that I was on the same page as you guys, basically saying that I don't think it's an infinite plane, that there must be some sort of end. But then I started thinking recently that all they would need to know is the center point, right? So once they had the North Pole and they put some iron there or whatever, it's naturally occurring, then you create the compass, and that explains everything. That explains why 95% of the population lives in the northern hemisphere. Hemisflame. That's why everyone lives in the north. Only 5% live in the south, because everything that we do draws you to the north. That's the way the compass points. Well, if we think about it, we think we can circumnavigate the flat Earth, but we're actually following the compass. You're not following your own directions. If you just got in a boat and went west and then threw away the compass and continued to go in that direction, who knows where you'd go? We don't know where you'd end up. It might be other land. We don't know. How would we know that? Because nobody's going to do that. You would get lost.
I think that there's, I just have a theory, and I don't know, it makes sense to me, but I think there's probably, maybe not a continent, but there's probably some land in that huge gaping hole of nothing where it's just ocean for half the globe. I'm willing to bet that there's some sort of land that we as common people are not aware of, and I think it, not necessarily direct evidence for it, but it's just, I've seen things, and just my sort of gut tells me that there should be something there.
Yeah, it would make sense.
Everybody would just take off in a boat and they would always use the compass no matter what. Or a GPS unit. So no matter what, you are forced to stay where they want you. You're not even allowed to think outside of that. In order to do that, you have to get rid of the compass. You have to get rid of your GPS device, because that is what tells you where you're at. Well, of course it's going to tell you to stay close to that, the centermost circle. So it just makes all the sense to me why we have everybody packed into this northern area, and only 5% of the world living in the south, and we don't even know what's beyond that. But I totally agree, John, that huge body of water out there where they can't possibly keep track of planes. Obviously, they erase off the plane tracker. So it's just really a nonsense what they did. And, I would wish that one day I'm able to go out there and check it out. I don't know how. John, buy a boat.
Yeah, people have told me, why don't you just go down there and find out? It's like, okay, I'm just going to go down to Antarctica tomorrow on my way home from work.
Hey, Bob, you know about this. Have you ever done long-range orienteering? I've done it quite a few times, and I was thinking at the time, this doesn't add up. As you're moving east or west, your compass is continually curving. If you watch your path, you will arc to the right as you move west. And if you watch your path, you will arc to the left if you're moving east.
Yes, that's absolutely true. And actually, what actually winds up happening is there is a vector difference as you kind of traverse that direction, because you're following your compass, true, but you're really actually going in a vector, which means that ultimately you're going around in a circle. And a lot of people don't understand that when you navigate via compass, they think that because you're on a ball, if you go one direction true, that you're going to go all the way around the Earth.
Yeah, it would have to be a perfectly straight line if it was a ball, and then of course they say, magnetic north is this fickle thing, and that's how they get around it. But yeah, it's totally true.
Yeah. So yeah, that's one thing that and also that was another discussion that we had with Morgan Inches, was that he didn't seem to really to get that there is a vector factor, because on a ball going east is one thing, and you actually would go around all the way around in a circle, but on a flat plane, when you are constantly vectoring against magnetic north, you are not going any true direction at all. You are vectoring in with respect to magnetic north,
Yeah.
which means that you're going around in a great big circle, and that's, a lot of people have a hard time wrapping their head around that, because again, we've been so heavily indoctrinated with this globe model. The first thing that pops into your head when you're going east is the globe, and you're going to wind up on some other continent, and and that's true to some degree also with the flat Earth, but they just are not the same thing, northeast, south, and west on the globe versus the flat plane.
Well,
So-
some people seem to take the position also that maps work, and therefore we live on a globe. And the thing is the world has been flat forever, and maps have always worked, and they even work on the globe model theoretically. And that's the thing. I mean, people think that maps are supposed to be accurate representations of the ground, and actually they're not. I mean, the azimuthal equidistant and the standard Mercator projection are both admittedly, by definition, skewed the further away you get from the equator. So, I'm going to hold fast to my position that I don't think we have any accurate maps, period, not in globe Earth or flat Earth.
Yeah, I totally agree, and that's and that kind of brings us back to the 1563, I believe, Mercator map. Which when you look at that, it's a completely different land layout, and that's one of the the things that I thought was absolutely amazing. That it doesn't resemble our modern day maps in any way, shape, or form. So which when you're looking at something like that, how did they get it so wrong? How did Mercator, quote unquote, get it so wrong? Or is it that he really got it so right, and that's why it's just been buried all this time?
And you're talking about the circular plane one?
Yeah, I'll bring it up here in just a second.
Yeah.
I think there's something to be said there for that. He just wouldn't have a good sense of scale at the time, and he's roughing in the distances in between. So.
Right. Well, one of the problems I had with it too is that you've got California mapped out all nicely and neatly, but California was still being discovered when that map was released, and California wasn't really fully mapped out for another 200 years. But they didn't even find the San Francisco Bay until 200 years after Mercator made that map. So, I mean, I guess my point with that is he was certainly just going on a lot of conjecture and best guesses for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting the one you just brought up here, Bob. So that would just be that. To me, anyways, I would see that as a fairly accurate representation of the pole. Other than the northern Canada, it's not done very smooth.
Yeah.
So not very accurate.
Yeah, and I agree. And the interesting part about this is showing as a 1606. I could have sworn it was a 1563, but whatever. It looks like it's.
There's a few versions.
I'm sorry.
There's quite a few versions of them, so quite a few in different years that shows the same thing.
Yeah, and again, this is the interesting thing about this, as I pointed out before, is when you look at this area up here that kind of branches into a tree, and these particular patterns of the rivers that are flowing in towards the Polaris or Mount Meru, it is analogous to some of the magnetic patterns that we have seen on some people that have done videos that will hold a magnet, a neodymium magnet, up against a CRT, and interestingly enough, this almost exactly verbatim, this pattern appears. So again, this to me looks like a magnetic construct. Exactly.
That's a good point. I see just. And this is what we see in nature, is that if you look at a cloud or you look at a river delta that's recently emptied, you'll see that it's a fractal pattern that repeats, and that's the Fibonacci total. You see the 1:16 ratio that our bodies are made up in, from our fingertips to our hand to our elbow, so on and so forth. It's a 1:16 ratio, and that's the pattern that's being used. So I see that they're showing river deltas at the heads of those rivers. And that looks realistic. It looks like someone has actually been there, seen it, and mapped it. So.
Right, absolutely. So again, you have to wonder: were the maps of old, ancient, actually the more accurate maps, or the ones today. Now, I think that we've seen several examples, including by cartographers themselves, that are saying that the maps are not accurate and that they obviously have different revisions of them, Mercator to Peters and several different variations as we're looking at, here on Google Maps. But all of these are very ancient maps, and they're all very, very different from what we see today. And they say, well, our maps today have to be more correct because we have satellite technology to photograph them, which is nonsense. We might, we really don't have anything that'll go much higher today than we did probably a couple hundred years ago. I mean, how long have helium balloons been around? And how long ago were they able to soar over 100,000 feet? Kind of makes you wonder, because still today the basic makeup of these balloons is just a bunch of helium inside of an ultralight material,
Really
or hydrogen.
That's a great point.
Well, one thing I'll point out too is obviously our maps are far more accurate than anything from history because, look at Google Earth. So the maps we have are great, but my whole point to that would be, when you zoom out and keep zooming out on Google Earth, just because it looks and fits nicely into the shape of the continent, that doesn't really mean anything. It's just data that's, it's compressed when you zoom out a certain degree, and it'll fit into anything. It'll fit into,
That's right.
pick a shape. So. But in terms of our maps being accurate depictions of the land masses, I think there's no way. I mean, just look at the definition of all the maps that we use, and so yeah, I think there's a good chance. I was the reason I like that Mercator flat Earth map. I don't know what it's, the 1606 one, is simply because it doesn't look anything like the maps we're used to seeing, and so that's probably a good place to start.
Sorry, what I was trying to say there is I used to work with maps a fair bit. And when you're trying to paste them together and you're using real scale maps, you have to scale up the size of elevations. I used to work with digital terrain elevation maps. And so those, when we watch it on Google and other things, it looks realistic to your eye, but it's completely way off what it actually would look like on the computer if you do it to scale. It's hard to describe, but mountains are like 10 times smaller on an actual digital terrain plate than they are when they put it on the map and you see it to make it fit in that.
We lost you, so we'll hang tight till he pops back in. Did we get you back? Yeah, I think we got you back now.
Okay, so it's way off scale when we're looking at these renderings. We do that so that people can see it and understand it more clearly. But for real, it's way, way smaller. If you were to actually map it out with a computer. Got
Yeah.
it?
Yep, we got you. So, okay, so yeah, anyway, it's really fascinating to study this stuff, and this one at least is labeled a little bit better, so we see Canada, but I don't know what this particular portion inside of Canada was supposed to represent, unless you...
It's supposed to be Hudson's Bay, but way off scale.
Yeah. Well, at least we think it is, right? So, yeah, it's pretty interesting stuff. So another thing I wanted to bring up, and this might interest you guys also, have any of you heard of this guy, Joseph Newman? And the reason I ask is because I had never heard of this guy before ever in my life. And I was doing some research. Actually, I was looking into, another magnetic phenomenon that comes back to me here in a minute. And I stumbled across this guy, and apparently he got quite famous, and he was on all the talk shows. Johnny Carson invited him on. But what he has done is he has this way of putting batteries together in series to create a high voltage type of circuit, and he couples this together with a rotating magnetic field, and he is able to power this huge pump back here, which would probably draw, something like on a 440 line, probably draw something like a couple hundred amps And when you start considering how much power that is, it's several tens of thousands of watts, and he's running this thing on this bank of 9-volt batteries. And what's really amazing about it is that so many people have replicated his experiments, and even Congress at one point said that he got a raw deal because the patent office would not issue him any patent on his technology to do this. There were engineers. Yeah, there were engineers from all the major corporations, Raytheon, General Electric. Just all the big names that came forward and said, "This is absolutely."
He's lucky he didn't wake up with his head sewn to the carpet.
Yeah, I know. Well, he got a little bit too popular because, like I said, he was in. You watch this movie and he was in virtually every talk show by like I said, from Carson on down, and even there was a bill even in front of Congress that several congressmen and senators were saying, look, we have colleges, we have physicists, we have doctorates, we have hundreds of people with sworn affidavits saying that this technology works absolutely, that something that today would normally take so much power that it's almost enough to power a small city. He's doing it off of a bank of 9-volt batteries, and his machine is incredibly simple. But basically, what it involves again is a rotating magnetic field, and it's powered by these batteries in series, and they come out to be about 400 and something volts. And it draws less current. It actually goes into an over unity condition where it produces more power than it uses. And of course, obviously, a bank of batteries couldn't even turn that thing, in under normal circumstances, let alone power it continuously. And so he has come forward and talked about, desalinization and being able to create. In fact, that's what this rig is that he's got behind him, is this big water pump, and that's one of the big things that they say makes desalinization unviable, is that it takes too much energy to run all these pumps and also the desalinization process. Well, this man has done it. He shows it very clearly in this demonstration. Like I said, the documentation is absolutely endless to this guy, and there are people out there that are replicating this experiment. And now, here we are in 2015 today. Now what you hear about it is, oh yeah, well, even in Wikipedia, of course, he was cheating and using all these other power sources, and it's like all these lies, basically. But yet he had the affidavits of literally hundreds of doctorates, PhDs in electrical engineering, that are attesting that this is the real deal. And just like some of the other technologies that we've seen in the past, it got buried, absolutely buried. And so this is something that I really think everybody needs to check out, is this particular video. And I will drop this link in the chat, our chat as well as the outside chat, and everybody really needs to kind of check this out. So have any of you heard about this at all?
I had never heard about it, but I'm so familiar with the MO and sort of the story, what happens. I mean, even like the diesel engine, we've had the technology to run internal combustion engines on peanut oil for decades and decades, and yet we still put gasoline in the thing for some reason. But then you look at like Stan Meyer or Tom Ogle, their work that they did running internal combustion engines on nothing more than water, and they were literally suicided and found in their trunk and all sorts of wild stuff. And so that's sort of what typically happens when somebody stumbles on or invents free energy technology, is they get ridiculed and suicided. And I suppose the best thing he had going for him was that he was pretty much public. He was on all the talk shows, and so I guess that probably, in my opinion, probably saved his life.
Yep. Very interesting. Yep.
Sorry about that, guys. I had my mic muted. I'm sitting here talking away, and it's like, whoops, wait a minute. So yeah, there is also accompanying PDFs. Now, I got these. As soon as I saw this, he actually wrote a book about this, and it's called The Energy Machine of Joseph Newman. And no, he is not. He's self-educated. The man is a genius, straight up, without a doubt. But after all of the rigmarole that he went through trying to get a patent, and he never did get a patent issued, and that whole thing was a comedic act also, and it's very well documented in the movie. But so he wrote this book about it, and I went on Amazon to look for it, and they want, something like $90, $100, something like that on Amazon. But then I found on Squib the PDF, so I signed up for a day, and I, for $8 or whatever, and I downloaded all the book material on it for it. So, and I can make that available to anybody that wants it. I will be more than happy to give it to you. This is one thing I'm going to be studying this week, because he describes the secrets of how to build it, how it works. There are several people out there. Go ahead, Glenn.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, and I actually want to do something like this, because it looks to me like the information contained in this document will allow you to build a device that will not only power your house, but almost anything else that, and it doesn't even weigh very much. It's relatively, simple to build, and this theory is very straightforward in it.
I've seen his work documents before.
Oh, you have seen his work before, Joseph Newman?
I've seen his stuff on YouTube, yeah, and heard about the Newman machine.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating story, and like I said, it's amazing how stuff like this can just completely escape your notice, and people have no idea that men like this exist. And of course, it's because of the controlled media. And they will poo-poo on these people and just make them seem like they're complete crazy people, and that they were cheating, and so many lies and stories. It's just beyond belief. But I mean, from the few hours that I was researching this seems like it's absolutely the real deal. It looks like it's pretty airtight, and like I said, he goes into great detail, and of course it all centers around magnetics. What a surprise. And I think that
so it's almost like it looks like it's some sort of gyroscopic magnetic device. I always thought that would be a great path to explore for free energy. It looks like he's done it, huh?
Yes, that is precisely what it is gyroscopic and magnetic energy, and he describes the whole story about it in that movie. And like I said, it's really quite simple, and this fits right back into the very magnetic model that we're looking at, for the flat Earth. And also, what the mathematical breakdown that Randy Powell has described. This goes right back into that vortex-based mathematics. Now, he didn't have, Joseph Newman didn't have the mathematics down for all this. In fact, he was really, just kind of a common everyday guy. But and he was talking about that he just kind of got this vision one day and built this machine, and he has demonstrated it the world over to universities, corporations, everybody, and it's amazing how they got shut down. Just like, it's kind of like what happened with the guy named Royal Raymond Rife. And I don't know if you guys have ever heard about him, but he was a doctor that lived right around the turn of the century, the 20th century, early 1900s, and he invented a device that was hailed as the end to all illness. And it was a very simple idea in that he hypothesized that every living organism, virus or whatever, had a resonant biofrequency, which today we know is absolutely true. And Royal Rife actually built this microscope that is unrivaled even today, where he was able to actually observe these viruses and then do experiments on them and figure out what their resonant frequency is. And then he would then fire a directed frequency at them, and they would literally disintegrate. And so the best way to describe this would be akin to when an opera singer is singing and hits that high note and it shatters a wine glass. What's happening there is the vibration from the opera singer's voice is actually vibrating at the resonant frequency of the glass, and when you have resonance, you have maximum power transfer. And so it simply becomes overwhelming for the structure, and it just literally disintegrates it. So what he did is he invented this machine. He called it the Rife machine, and he came out with a whole list of these, viruses and illnesses and their resonant frequency, and he treated cancer virtually 100% successfully, as well as almost any other type of disease. And again, very simple theory behind it, brilliant simplicity, and it worked so well. And of course they ruined him. They absolutely ruined him, and they shot him down, and because he literally had the cure for everything. And to this day, I actually own a Rife machine, and I can tell you that it has worked wonders for not only myself in treatments, but as some of my friends, curing everything from, well, you name it. I mean, one friend actually had oh geez, what was it? Hepatitis B or C, something like that, and she had been dealing with doctors for a long time on it. It was supposedly one of the most the uncurable ones, and after several sessions on the Rife machine, she went to the doctor, and suddenly it was all gone. So I mean, these things are there, they're real, they're highly suppressed, and this invention by Joseph Newman is just another one of those things. So I would highly recommend that everybody look into this, because it's critical, I believe.
That's awesome. I'd never heard of a Rife machine. I'll have to check that out. But that's that's pretty sweet, because you'd think it makes perfect sense to me. Any sort of mass, any object has a harmonic resonance, and there's a specific frequency to anything, I guess, right? And if you can sort of hit that harmonic resonance frequency and you could cure cancer, yeah, that makes sense. I never knew anyone came out with it, and that's sort of their whole plan, right? Is to they're making such great money on the big pharmaceutical companies and such, and they've got their corporate lobbyists, and that's way more important than people having a cure for a disease, of course.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. So, but again, just something else. But the reason I found it so interesting, was because it's so applicable in the magnetic model. And guys, you can help me out here. What was the guy, the something effect? I forgot what the effect is called. Where it literally will take a metal bar and just melt it.
Oh yeah, the Hutchinson, John Hutchinson
effect. Yeah, Hutchinson effect. That's what I was actually researching. And interestingly enough, the Hutchinson effect, when you learn about how that works, it's very much the very same type of idea, where you hit resonance with whatever it is that you're bending, and it causes this molecular chain reaction, and that's what causes the metal bars, iron bars, to literally just turn to dust, more or less. And so I was thinking about that, and of course I was obviously thinking also about Dr. Judy Wood's theory and ideas behind this super weapon that disintegrated the towers. And again, it seems to me like that they could have weakened those structures very much so with something that was akin to the Hutchinson effect. So Glenn, have you looked into that?
Yeah, that's all. That lines right up. That makes complete sense as you just laid that out. It's perfect. Did that. Particularly the orgone machine, taking out organisms from our body. It just makes sense that you could match their frequency that kills them and not harm us and kill them. Yeah, everything that you just talked about there is stuff that I've looked at. It totally lines up. It makes sense. The part about the infinite energy machine, the new machine, everybody knows this from science class. Just take any metallic bar and put it.
Yeah, hey, we lost you again, dude, and I can barely hear you. Can you turn your mic up a little bit?
Yeah, I'm as loud as I can go.
Oh, okay, no worries. I was just gonna see if you could boost it, but anyway, we lost you again. Go ahead.
Sorry. Okay. Yeah, my connection's pretty bad. I'm gonna let you guys go soon, but yeah, it makes sense. It lines up. When you put a metallic bar inside of a coiled wire, you're gonna get energy out of it, whether you move it or not. You get that.
Yep, absolutely true.
So yeah, it all lines up for me.
Okay, well, good. Well, so this will give you something else to make some videos about, Glenn. Because hey, I got to ask you, how do you do this all day long? I have never seen anybody in my life that turns out content like you do.
I just
how do you do that?
I just take a couple hours and I'll have an idea for me, sit down and work it out. Basically, I've been copying what you guys are doing, so, to some extent. I've been following you guys. I follow Morgal quite a bit, John, yourself there. I like your work. Always seem to be talking about the same things that I'm thinking about. So, yeah, that's how it happens. I just come home and put it together and see how it goes.
Yeah, good
Okay.
deal, man. Thank you. Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and there's so much material to make videos on. And I actually I spent, I don't know, probably the better part of 50 hours last week working on a video and uploaded it. Got a copyright strike for a clip of, believe it or not, The Wizard of Oz. I meant to use just 3 seconds of it, and I kept 30 seconds of it. And if you believe it or not, I guess it's MGM pulled copyright strike and did a takedown. So for the time being, I'm back to making 15-minute videos, which is sort of a blessing because, if you crank, this one was 2.5 hours and it took like, I don't know, 17 hours to render in high definition. So it gets to the point where, okay, maybe that's a sign. I'm going to make some short 15-minute videos. And I've seen some of your stuff. I know you've made some long videos too, but it is so time consuming. And if you're able to put out content, that's awesome, man. Spread the word. That's what I say.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. It's been fun. It's very fun.
Yep. So yeah, because I've seen I've got my phone set to do notifications for the people that I follow that are my favorite YouTubers and stuff, and of course Flatwater is one of them. And my phone will go off 6-7 times in one day with you, Glenn.
Yeah.
It's just
like the Morgal was saying, I just got cut down on a copyright strike as well, so I put out a long piece. I had to chop it into chunks, so it looks like it's a lot of work.
yeah. I noticed that your last series that you just did was all in 15-minute increments,
Yeah.
so it was pretty apparent to me what had happened. But yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, that happens.
But-
Come after
Yeah.
us.
Every time I've gotten one, I've appealed it, and so far they've all been taken down. And this one here, I hadn't even published it, so I appealed it, and hopefully, it won't be forever, for 6 months or whatever. But I need anyone out there who has a lot of flat earth stuff on YouTube, make sure and download all your stuff in case your channel gets taken down, because several people are getting took down. And so what I'll probably do also is set up a second channel and just put everything on there as a duplicate, just in case.
Yeah, you have to be so careful. You never know what they're gonna take you down for. You put up all kinds of stuff and it's not copyright, and then one minute there's a jingle in the background, knock your whole video, knock your channel down.
Yeah, it makes me so mad too, because I go to pretty great lengths to just, if I'm going to use a video clip, I'll try to make sure that I only use a few seconds of it, of like a movie or whatever. And yeah, it's like I couldn't believe they claimed so hard copyright strike on The Wizard of Oz. That movie's decades old, but
Yeah,
yeah,
that's definitely public domain by now. You can.
yep, for sure.
Well, yeah, but
on it. That should be allowed. It's not like he's
Yeah,
trying
you would
to
think.
make it out as his own, like The Wizard of Oz by Morgal.
Right.
Right.
Well, no, and the thing is, see, they have the option. Just because I use a 30-second clip of theirs in a 2.5-hour video, they can monetize that video now. They have a choice to either monetize it or just totally take it down. And so it's just kind of silly, a movie that old for. I think the clip I used was 30 seconds for them to do that and not just monetize it like most companies would. So
Yeah, you're well
Yeah.
within your fair use rights that you're using for comparison or for education or any of the other kind of fair use models.
right, it's ridiculous.
Okay, I'm gonna let you guys go. Thanks so much for having me on.
All right,
All
man. It's
right,
good
well-
to meet you.
Yeah, Glenn, thanks for coming on, and we appreciate you, and we'll be catching more of your videos. So, everybody, this has been Flatwater and Glenn, and have a good one, dude.
Thanks, guys. I'll catch you soon.
All right,
Ciao.
okay.
Bob, let me show you one thing if you let me share my screen. I don't know if you've seen this yet. Oh, there.
Okay, and oh, there he went.
My
Okay.
screen?
Not yet, but I will present you. Hang on a second. Let me stop this and present to everyone. All right, we have a black screen, Jaren, but we are presenting. Oh, there we got an image. Ta-da! Oops.
Moving.
Oh, there you go. No, it's not moving yet. Oh, there, it just started jumping. Okay, yeah, it's moving now.
So I don't know if you've seen this yet, but I saw this today. Thought it was pretty incredible.
I have seen this graphic. In fact, I downloaded it last week because I thought it was so cool. Reminds me of my spirograph that I had. When I was a kid, I had a spirograph. So,
John, you seen this?
No, I've never seen it, but what is that supposed to be, like the orbit of the sun? I mean, the orbit of the Earth and the moon. See, now I'm starting to do Freudian slips for the flat Earth, so that's good.
Well, it has the sun being the blue and the brown.
I can hardly see it.